Hello, my name is Fred, and welcome to the Max Review. In this episode, we turn our attention to Canada's evolving energy landscape. Energy and Natural Resource Minister Tim Hodgson joined CTV's Vassy Kapelos to discuss how the federal government plans to reshape the country's energy supply, from renewables and clean technologies to the future of oil and gas. The conversation comes amid growing questions about Canada's path to net zero, energy affordability, and how policy decisions today will shape the country's economic and environmental future. Here's Vassy's in conversation with Energy and Natural Resource Minister Tim Hodgson.
We'll start today with the Liberal government's effort to pivot Canada's economy. U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs are biting month after month at the economy. Bilateral trade talks remain paused or terminated, depending on who you ask. Here in Ottawa, ministers and officials are about to table a long-anticipated federal budget that they insist will meet the moment. Key to meeting the moment, the government's plan to turn Canada into a so-called energy superpower. The feds say they want to sell more conventional energy, but are our allies ready to buy? G7 energy ministers just finished meeting in Toronto, which is where we find Federal Energy and Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson. Hi, Minister. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our program. Thank you so much for making the time.
Pleasure to be here.
Minister, your announcement this week on critical minerals is to better position the G7 to counter non-market dominance. That's, of course, China. At the same time, though, Prime Minister Mark Carney has just met with President Xi and expressed great enthusiasm for what your government is calling a strategic partnership with China. Why are we broadening a relationship with a country we just invoked the Defense Production Act to ward against?
So, look, my job and what everyone was doing today at the G7 is focusing on energy security and security of our supply chains. We weren't there talking about individual countries and non-market actors. What we were there talking about was the real-world reality that our G7 democracies and many like-minded countries face real challenges with secure supply chains. And I have to tell you, this was made so real to all of us as we sat at dinner last night with our friend and colleague, the Minister of Energy from the Ukraine. And as we were talking about our families and the niceties that you would talk about at a dinner, the minister of the Ukraine was scrolling through her emails, trying to understand how many transmission facilities were destroyed last night, how many gas transmission facilities were destroyed last night, and just to put an even finer point on it, how many workers who were out there repairing those substations or gas plants were murdered as they were trying to repair them by the Russian drones. That is what we are facing in the world today. It is our responsibility to make sure we have secure energy and secure supply chains. That's what we were focused on.
With respect, Minister, I do take your point on, especially as you describe the situation in Ukraine. I listened to your entire press conference this afternoon. There were at least two different instances in which you did refer to non-market actors. You also talked about being serious about market concentration. You are referencing China, and Canadaskis, that's what the G7 was talking about. How do you reconcile for Canadians that you are invoking, of doing something very serious and invoking the Defense Production Act on an issue of national security, while at the same time, 12 hours earlier, the Prime Minister is saying we're going to pursue a reset with China? How do you reconcile that?
So we want to trade with many countries. I am not the Minister of Trade. I'm going to leave that to Prime Minister Carney. I'm going to leave that to Minister Sidhu. I know Minister Anand is involved with the discussions in China. What I am focused on doing is ensuring we have diversity of supply. It is in no country's interest, what we heard from all the G7 members today, including other allied countries like Australia, that it is in none of our interests to have the vast majority of production or processing with one particular country. We're not saying we don't want to have any, but it is in nobody's interest to have one country or a couple of countries control that and then be able to use it for geopolitical purposes. Our goal is to take that card away. Our goal is to create diversity of supply so that we can trade with multiple countries and have that ability that no one country can use trade in energy or critical minerals for economic and political purposes.
Is that what, in your view, China is doing when it comes to critical minerals? And that is why you had to do what you did today?
Um, Look, it's lost on none of us at the G7 that a few weeks ago, Japan put export restrictions on multiple critical minerals. Sorry, excuse me. China put export restrictions on multiple critical minerals that are absolutely core to the functioning of our economies. My understanding is that is paused, but that, Vassy, is a wake-up call. That is a wake-up call that we should never we should never allow ourselves to be put in that situation. We are correcting that. All the G7 countries. What was really amazing, and I think what we need to understand is today we signed 26 contracts with 9 different countries to bring forward 6 different critical mineral mines and processing facilities in Canada that would not otherwise have come forward. They're coming forward because our allies say we want diversity of supply. And what does that mean? That means jobs for Canadians. That means new mines, new processing, all the ancillary services that go with that. And that's a win for Canada.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand on behalf of Canadians the national security imperative that you laid out. When you talk about a wake-up call, I did want to also ask you on this issue, because it does appear that we are closely aligning ourselves to the United States, not just with the announcement that you made today, but also the U.S. government has taken an ownership stake in 2 Canadian critical mineral companies. There's a recent deal that'll see Cameco again give the U.S. government increased access to Canadian uranium. Why are we handing the White House so much of our leverage with these strategic assets?
Not to take away from what Vassy was talking about earlier on, but let's not forget about the human rights violations that are being done in China. At least here in U.S., it's a democratic country. You know, the people in the United States, elected the government there. It's not the same in China. You can't compare those two separate countries and economies together. Most businesses in the U.S. are private entities, owned by privatized organizations, whereas in China, most of them are owned by the government. You can't get access to the Chinese market unless you cozy up to the CPP or CCP government. You know, let's not forget most people leave China to come to Canada just to get away from political persecution from these countries. And all of a sudden, you guys feel so comfortable to cozy up with them and work with them while we have a democratic country right next to us, whom we do more than 70% of our trade with them. And you're talking about diversifying with the dictator. Come on, guys. Smarten the heck up.
Let me repeat for your viewers again. 26 different deals with 9 different countries, with every single G7 country, along with other allied countries from 4 different continents. The vast majority of those deals were with countries other than the United States. The United States did participate in that. We want them to. We believe in multilateralism. We believe that our supply chains will be more robust if we have many off takers, not one or two. And this is a win. So I fundamentally reject your premise what we are doing is aligning ourselves with the G7. We are aligning ourselves with a multilateral approach to solving this problem.
The U.S., though, has been spearheading for a long time, trying to prompt actions from allies, traditional allies, I should say, to counter China's dominance in the critical mineral space. I combine the announcement today, and I take your point that it is a multilateral effort, with three other announcements, which give the U.S. government specifically increased access to strategic assets in this country. While at the same time, the White House is throwing down tariffs, the ambassador is lambasting us, the president is referencing us as the 51st state. How do you reconcile that for Canadians? Why are we handing that leverage over, Minister?
I know how. I know exactly how. These elbows, they just came down. That's how. Elbows right down the gutter.
So let me give you a little bit of a history lesson.
Oh,
For the last many years, people have been talking about the challenges of critical mineral supply chains. It was our prime minister. It was our prime minister who was the head of the G7 in Kananaskis in Alberta, who said Canada will take the lead. Canada proposed a critical minerals production alliance. It was a Canadian initiative. We got the agreement of the other G7 countries. We suggested the other countries appoint critical mineral envoys, which they all did in response to our request. And since the summer, we, Canada, have been taking the lead with our critical mineral envoys, working with the critical mineral envoys of 9 other countries, including every single G7 country, to turn that talk into real action. And that real action is $6.4 billion of Canadian projects now moving ahead to go from talk to reality. I think that's a great example of Canada punching above its weight.
Thank you, Minister, for the history lesson, but it doesn't address the substance of my question around why we are allowing the U.S. government, not U.S. companies, the U.S. government, increased access to strategic
yeah.
assets at a time when we are engaged in a trade war, at a time when the Prime Minister has specifically said the relationship as we know it with the United States as far as economic and security interdependence is over. Is that not the converse of what your party and your government has told Canadians?
That is a great question. That is a great question. Great question. Let's hear the answer.
Again, I don't think you have it. It's accurate. We have never said we don't want to trade with Americans. Americans have been great trading partners. What we've said is we want to diversify and grow our trading relationships. What the Prime Minister has said is we will significantly grow our trading relationships with other allies who share our values. What did we just do? We just announced.
Okay, hold on a second. You said with other allies that share our value. Which part of the values do we share with China? The part where the unalive people without proper legal what's it called? Anyway, someone to represent them, legal representation. Thank you. Right? How about that? Or where they unilaterally decide to just do whatever they want. I mean, we have no values with China. We can have the same values with the dictator. You know, at least here we can straight up say, you know what, the prime minister is not doing a good job. We can criticize the prime minister. Can you say the same thing? Can you do the same thing in China? Right? And let's not kid ourselves.
26 deals with 9 different countries, including every single G7 country. We are doing what we said we would do, which is diversify our trading relationships, grow our relationships with our allies. That is what we've said from the very beginning. That's what Canadians expect us to do. We are not proposing to shrink our relationship with the Americans.
Canada It's not an ally of China. First of all, if you're talking about helping Ukraine, right? Well, then being allying up yourself with China, it's not strategic. First of all, we know that China is providing Russia with critical dual components to use in the battlefield against Ukrainians. How can you possibly tell yourself you want to do business with a dictator that is, helping create more tension in Europe, right? It makes no sense. What you guys are doing makes no sense, right? These liberals are not here for Canadians. I'm sorry to say. These guys are only here for their pockets. And it's exactly what is happening right now.
Americans. We are proposing to grow our relationship with others.
Are you sure that you and your party colleagues have never said that you're proposing to not keep the relationship where it is with the United States? Because I remember the Prime Minister saying our old relationship we had with the U.S. based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations is over.
Thank
That
you.
is the message, with great respect, Minister, that Canadians received during
Hmm.
the campaign and
Yes.
after. I understand that what you did today is about multilateralism, but not everything on the critical mineral file falls into that category. And the examples I provided are about deepening the relationship with a White House, with a U.S. government that has taken direct aim at our country.
We have said is a reality where we put all of our eggs in one basket, where 70% of our export trade is with one country, is not in our long-term interests, and that we want to continue to have a good relationship with the United States. They are our largest trading partner. We want that relationship to be strong and robust. The Americans have decided they're going to change how the international trading system works. That's their decision. We are going to respond in ways that are good for Canada. And that means we are going to grow our relationships with other like minded allies. We are going to reduce our dependence on one particular customer. That is good business. That's what any business person would do. That's what this government is doing because that's what Canadians expect us to do.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. Minister, appreciate your time very much today. Thank you.
These guys are robots. I, 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 I can't understand what the hell is going on. Seriously, just keep repeating the same things over and over again and hope that it makes sense. How do you guys, sleep at night? Anyway, once again, my name is Fred. This is the Max Review. We'll see you next time.